Hello, YNABers. My name is Jesse Meekum, and this is podcast number 471 for YNAB, where we teach you 4 rules to help you stop living paycheck to paycheck, get out of debt, and save more money. Today, I'm bringing you another money story. I will be talking to Sita Thomas. She claimed, she said, I don't have these big numbers. I haven't closed 55 credit cards. I haven't paid off $1 million of debt. And I love that. I love that she recognizes that her story is her story. And honestly, can't it sometimes be a little or a lot more relatable to hear of someone just kind of doing their thing? And I would say doing the normal thing, but it's not normal at all. We actually dig into that quite a bit. Sita mentions that she has narratives in her head that she had to kind of overcome that have helped her not just with her money, but also with her life. And I just couldn't be more pleased to bring you Sita's story. Without further ado, Sita Thomas. Well, yeah, I guess first just tell YNABers a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to just dive right into the story.
Yeah, so I have been using YNAB. I had to go back in my email and look it up because I wanted to know. I signed up in the summer of 2013, so that'll be almost 6 years. Almost 8 years.
8 years, yeah. That's a long time. I mean, you've been around a while.
I've been around a while. I mean, I haven't been one of those. I'm not like one of the OG spreadsheet people, which I'm sort of jealous of them. I'm like, I'm like, I wish I could say. I was like, I remember back when it was this downloadable spreadsheet, but I'm not that cool.
Yeah, there were like 8 of those people. We did not sell a lot of that spreadsheet. So, but yeah, you've been around a while. You were here before we moved to the web app.
Yeah, I was on YNAB 4.
Okay, and when you started on YNAB 4, did you start out of the gate kind of like you've been using it from day one? Were there some stops and starts along the way?
Oh, there were so many starts and stops, so many fresh starts. I really, I was trying to think about sort of why, like how it clicked for me finally, how YNAB clicked. And I didn't really have one of those like aha moments that a lot of people have. I think it was just like a slow and steady burn for me, like just messing up over time, falling off the wagon and just ignoring the app. I pulled out one of my super old cell phones the other day. I was moving and I was like, what is this? And I powered it on and I found like this really old version of the phone app. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like looking through my budget and I was like, no wonder I didn't stick with this. Like I kept kind of coming and going because like I didn't have any true expenses in there. Like it was terrible. It was like food budget, $8,000, overdraft fees, It was bad. Yeah. So yeah.
I guess let's go back even further. What prompted you back in 2013 to like find a company called YNAB and be like, oh, okay, yeah, I think I do.
Yeah. Honestly, I just like did a web search and found it.
Okay.
And the reason I think that I was looking for a budget in the first place was because I started a business and I was like, budgeting is something that business people do.
Yes,
right?
It's very grown up. Yes, very business.
I was like, I was totally trying to do the grown up business thing. I had no idea what I was doing. And so I was like, I need a budget. Like this is something I know I should have been doing, like in my personal finances and stuff and just whatever. But I need to get serious about it for my business, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I just, Googled it and YNAB came up, luckily. And I was like, this is awesome. And this seems really simple and I can handle this. And there's these rules and yeah, this is great. This is perfect. So I started using it for both my business and personal and found tremendous success on both fronts.
Did you, what's the business? Are you still running the business? Well, let's do a little sidestep here.
Yeah. Well, this is actually a big part of my story. So we're sidestepping and jumping way ahead, but
okay, excellent.
Yeah, so I started my business. I started as a massage therapist, and I did that for almost a decade, nine years or so. And then, the pandemic made it really difficult, and I was kind of wanting to pivot anyway before that. And so I ended up switching careers. I just started a new job last week. This is my second week, so that's huge. We were actually supposed to have this podcast interview a few weeks ago, but then
before the new job.
Yes, before the new job. And so it's actually better that we're having it now because now I have like this big win, right? I'm like, I have a job. I started it and everything. I didn't have the job last time. So that was perfect. But yeah, so then I started my business. I did that for 10 years. I used YNAB the whole time. It was perfect, made everything super easy, did my taxes and all that, no problem. And stop getting overdraft fees.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Step one.
yeah, that all went perfectly. And so now I'm just doing it on the personal side of things now that I'm not, working for myself anymore, but it's great.
And the job, I mean, this is a positive. Like, this sounds like it's worked out as intended, as desired.
Yes.
Okay.
This
Very
is huge.
cool.
So one of the major kind of wins that I have with YNAB and why I'm such like a diehard YNAB person is because I directly attribute YNAB to allowing me to make this like massive career change. Right. And I think YNAB was also integral in my first business, not to say that, it wasn't, but, it wasn't the sort of the impetus for this new career.
Mm-hmm.
But part of the reason I went into the field that I did, which is data science.
Whoa. Hold on a second.
I pivoted from massage therapist to data scientist.
I was expecting like something like remotely related. Yeah.
Totally unrelated.
Oh, wow.
Not really necessarily totally unrelated. I think all my life I've been really analytically minded, and I've been always oriented towards seeing things from like an analytical perspective, right? And I did that in my practice as a massage therapist too. I was an orthopedic therapist. So I worked with a lot of people that had like chronic injuries. I worked with a ton of athletes, like professional musicians, people that really needed something fixed and, needed to be able to function very optimally. Like I wasn't one of those, like, let's,
like this is supposed to feel good and relax. Yeah. You're like, let's get you fixed.
Yes. I was much closer to like a physical therapist. And so one of the things that I did, in that job was to very analytically go through my treatment protocols to help people, right?
Gotcha.
And figure out if I do this, does this help your whiplash? If I do this, does it help, your tennis swing?
Mm-hmm.
So I've always been super analytical. So I know it seems like a random leap to go from massage.
But for you, this makes sense.
But for me, it totally makes sense. It makes perfect sense. So, but it was a big leap for me, and it was a very scary leap because I, am one of those people that when I was young, I didn't go to great schools. I fell behind in like math and science very quickly. And I had this very long-term idea that I was just like not smart in that way. Like I'm not a math, not a technical kind of person. Right. And that's a huge problem in like our whole country, America. We just have this weird thing about like math and numbers. Right. And money too is the same thing. Finance.
Yeah. You get like labeled early and you're like, oh, I guess that's me. It's off. Yeah.
Right.
I totally agree.
That's not me. Right. I'm not allowed in that space sort of. So that's how I felt about, about math and science and about finance too. I think for a long, long time, I didn't really do the budgeting thing because we have this whole attitude about like, budgeting, it's terrible. It's gross. Nobody wants to do it. It's restrictive. So one of the things that YNAB helped me do was, gain a lot of confidence. I realized once I started, actually budgeting, I was like, oh, I can do this. And like, I can understand finance, right. And budgeting in a way that, I didn't before. And that I was always sort of taught was this like impossible hurdle to overachieve, right? Or hurdle to achieve. One of the things that I learned, like growing up was, watching my parents. I was the last of 7 children.
Oh, cool. We have 7 kids. Represent. Sweet.
Yes,
that's cool. Yeah.
I was the last. And so it was always chaos in my house, right? I'm sure you're very familiar with that. Kids everywhere, and stuff everywhere, right? And I remember like just being surrounded by like piles of mail. And like, I don't think it was the classic, like, big rubber stamp, late notice kind of thing or whatever. It was just, there was always mail everywhere and like always like this disorganization. Right. And like my parents would always be sort of jumping through financial hoops. Like, I think we always had money, but it was always really stressful. Right. It was always like money and finances are this complicated, horribly stressful things. I got to do my taxes. Oh, now my taxes are late. Oh, I need these tax forms. We got to talk to the accountant. It was always like snippets here and there. We never talked about it directly, right? We never like had money conversations. But there was always this sort of atmosphere of just like discomfort and distrust and lack of knowledge around like finances.
Yeah.
So when I found YNAB, it was like, it just opened up everything. Like it suddenly became so much easier to make sense of all of it. Because I was like, there's 4 rules. Like that's it. That's what I've been missing all these years. Somebody just needed to tell me 4 basic rules and like I could get all my money under control. And of course I didn't trust it at first because a lot of us come into YNAB being like, are you really, is this really simple? Right? It's like too good to be true, right? What's the catch here? So, for years, maybe not for years, but for a long time, I was in YNAB and I was just kind of tracking and, being like, oops, I just spent $50 on a meal. Like, oh, well, I guess I'll find that money somewhere, right? But over time, I developed, that confidence, that financial confidence and that financial knowledge, and I learned, stuff about budgeting, but then I learned about, 401ks and investing and, all kinds of the other related stuff to do with money, right? And, and so it helped me realize, okay, I can actually learn something that I always kind of thought was not accessible to me, right? Going back to that childhood teaching of, this is you're a math person, you're not a math person, you're a money person, you're not a money person. I was like, now I'm a money person, right? I'm like labeled, check. All right, cool. And, that really gave me the confidence to be like, well, maybe I can be like a math and science person, right? Like I love, being in healthcare. I love doing massage therapy. I know I'm a very analytical person, and I know I have, this technical aspect to my work that, very few of my colleagues have. And I want to be able to leverage that, right? And so I started thinking like, if I can become a money person, what else can I do, right? Which seems like a very simple question, and kind of an obvious thing. Like, of course you can do stuff like, but I don't know. My brain didn't work that way at the time.
Yeah.
And, of course you can learn new things, right? But it really was YNAB. I feel like very strongly that it was YNAB that really got me to that mindset. And, one of the things that I say all the time when I'm, espousing my love for YNAB is that it's a lifestyle. It's not just a money management system. It's not just a budgeting software. It's a lifestyle. It's a way of thinking about everything in life, not just necessarily money. And that, that led straight into this kind of career change. So on a very deep mindset level, YNAB did that for me. But then also on a super practical level, like, can I literally afford to go back to school?
Right.
YNAB answered that question very easily.
Yeah.
So
you've been pretty active in what I think we're calling them boot camps now. Yeah. Kind of on the community. Do you do that because you're trying to find people like you? Or do you do it because it helps you? Like what? Just tell me why the engagement there.
That's a good question because honestly, I don't even really know how I got engaged. Like I wasn't engaged in the community from the start.
Yeah, I think this is pretty recent, right? Like, I mean.
It's been a couple of years. It's been a few years. But I mean, I've had YNAB for 8 years, so 8 years for maybe three years of being active in the community. I don't know. And the forums, I think I did like log into the forums, but then I don't know. They're not quite the same for me as using like Facebook or something.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that was part of the reason I wasn't super engaged in the beginning. But I think I became more engaged once I started getting into like advanced YNAB, right? Like,
yeah. Oh, that sounds fancy.
Going beyond the 4, I know it does sound going beyond the 4 rules, right? And doing things like, having like a comprehensive emergency fund. Like I have a category group that's an emergency fund now, rather than just emergency fund and then like some chunk of money. The way that I think about having my buffer or like rule 4, getting ahead, right? Aging my money. That I approach a little bit differently now. So I call it like, kind of tongue in cheek advanced YNAB. It's really not that much more advanced than the 4 rule. It's just, being a little bit more deliberate, I guess, with my money. So, and so I think once I became stronger in like understanding and using YNAB, I had more questions. And I also felt like I had maybe more to offer, because I wasn't particularly engaged early on. I did kind of lag in my use of the software and really utilizing it to its fullest capacity. And I was like, well, now that I know all this stuff and like I'm fully on board, like maybe I can help other people, not make the same mistakes I did. So I started getting involved in the community and, like the boot camps started up, which was super fun because I love anything that's like, really structured and like, let's just all get together as a community and like do the same thing. Right. And have this shared experience. Like, I totally love that. And so, so I just dived right in. And I think it helped that I was kind of like a YNAB veteran, I knew, the basics or whatever, even though I was still learning a lot myself. And even still now, I mean, I call myself a veteran. I call myself like an advanced YNAB user, quote unquote. But, I'm still learning and changing stuff around every day.
Oh, yeah.
And the community is great for that. The community is fantastic for that, making me think differently about things that I've been doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what's your next big budgeting goal? What will the budget get you? That's what I want to ask. What's it going to get you?
Yeah. So right now, this year, the budget will get me completely out of debt, which is super exciting. And a big part of that is making this career change. My income went up, which is super exciting. So of course, while I was job searching, I had a new YNAB budget just kind of set aside. I called it new budget. Who dis? And every time I was getting far enough in a job interview process, and if I knew how much the job paid, a rough rate, I would go in and play in the budget and be like, what can I do?
What will it look like? Yeah.
What would it look like? Right. I would feel screaming. And then, the job wouldn't go through because, I had 3 or 4 of them that fell through at various stages. And, so the next one, I'd be like, okay, well, what about this one? What can I do with this one? Right? So I had this whole plan. So I got this job and, obviously my salary is set now and I know what to look forward to. So I went straight into YNAB and I was like, all right, how much can I just throw at my debt? Right. One of the things that I needed to do to make this career change was go back to school. So I completed a program and but it wasn't like federal loans or anything. I had to take out a personal loan to do it. And wait, I want to back up and make an aside.
Totally. Let's do it.
This is another kind of big part of my story. It's sort of a sad story, so I don't know if you want to include it or not. But it was I was planning the career change. I started saving up money to pay for school with cash because that's the YNAB way, right?
That sounds good.
So I was like, all right, I'm going to save up a bunch of money and I'm going to go to school in a few months and I won't have to pay anything for it, right? And then my sister was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And so I had about a year to prepare for that. And so I took all of my school money that I was saving up for to take 2 months off so I could go and stay with my sister until the very end. So I was able to do that. I stopped working. I flew across the country. I stayed with my sister and I helped take care of her until she passed, which was, everything else, all the other benefits of YNAB are worth nothing compared to that ability, the ability to go and do that and take care of my sister and be with her. She died way too young. She was only 43. It's hard, obviously, to think about and to talk about, but it's much, much easier knowing that I was able to kind of have that time with her and process through all that. I don't feel like I really heavily grieved for very long because I had such this beautiful experience with her and this time with her toward the end, so the fact that I was able to do that and be 100% fully present and not worrying about literally anything else in my life. I left my husband and my dogs. And I was like, you just do your thing, right? Yeah. I'm going to be over here and I'm just going to be with my sister and my family and not think about any of that other stuff. And that was just absolutely invaluable. I don't think pre-YNAB, that wouldn't have been a thing I would have been able to do. I would have been I can come for a weekend and I would have been stressed out. I got to get back to work. It would have been a completely different experience, but I was able to be fully 100% there. Wow. And so I used my school money for that. And so when I got home, it was the pandemic was starting, right? So I got home my sister passed away in December. I got home in January and I was just getting back on track. Okay, let me start, figuring out how to go to school now that I've kind of burned through all the money that I had saved. And then the pandemic hit. And then I was like, all right, you know what? Life is just way too short, right? And crazy things can happen. Your sister can suddenly die and show you the mortality of, the fragility of human existence. Mm-hmm. And, a global pandemic can come out of the blue, right? And change everything for everybody. So I was like, life is too short. I'm just going to take out loans. I'm using YNAB. I know exactly how I'm going to get through this. I know exactly how long it's going to take me to get through this. I can sort of project out how much I expect I'll be earning in this new position. And I decided the trade-off is worth it, right? I'm going to go into a little bit of debt because I'll be able to get out of it super fast. And I just want to do this in my life, right? I'm feeling this sense of urgency and this sense of agency to take control over things because I didn't have any control with my sister. And I didn't have any control with the pandemic. So I was like, I'm going to go to school and do it now. And I'm going to handle it later.
Well, you say handle it later, but you're going in eyes wide open. You know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah.
Like full plan. So Yeah, I'll take issue with that one little bit. I mean, and the urgency that you said you felt, you're like, I feel this urgency. Like we have to kind of respect, and people can go spiritual or not or whatever. But when you're feeling something, like feeling it, you got to give it respect. What else can you do except acknowledge it? So anyway, that's
You're right.
unbelievable, man. I was going to say what a year, but that's like the understatement of the century. It's, it's insane. So you're a year into this now. You finished schooling essentially. Are you still kind of finishing it as you start your job? How does it look there?
Yeah. So I finished school. I finished in the end of October, and it took me about 2.5 months to find a job. So I was not working the vast majority of 2020. And, I was getting like some employment and then, or some unemployment and then the stimulus checks. And, I had a little bit of income from the beginning of the year, but mostly, I was just in school. I was just totally 100% focused on school, which was another thing that YNAB let me do, was to recognize, how much money I sort of needed to go into debt to do school, and how far the money that I had would carry me through that. Right. So I could kind of leverage both and give myself time to focus 100% on school. That was another reason that how YNAB helped me prepare for this career change was when I was in undergrad, I had to work my entire way through it. I worked full-time and I went to school full-time, and it was horrible. My health suffered and my education suffered. And, you're not able to do, the things that you normally would in college and be totally immersed in that when you have to work. So, another thing that was kind of in my way about kind of this career change was this fear of going back to school, because I didn't think I could handle juggling work and school. I didn't want to put myself through that again. Right. And YNAB helped me realize I didn't have to do that. I could just plan ahead, take time off, and then 100% immerse. And that was actually possible for me to do. Pre-YNAB, I would have been like, that's crazy. You have to get school loans. That's what everybody does, right? Yeah. I'm a millennial. That's what everybody did.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting also. Like, I mean, you basically made an investment. You leveraged, you borrowed, you took out a loan, you leveraged, you got the education, you got the job, and you'll pay back the loan within a year.
Yes.
So the ROI on that, and then from this point forward, your income is what it is, and it will hopefully climb and be glorious and all that. But the ROI on that 1 year where you could fully focus and make that shift, it's big.
Yes, it's amazing. Yeah. It's really big. And the other thing about making this career change was that my income ceiling skyrocketed, right? So as a massage therapist, you can only work so many hours in a week before your body just right. So either I would have to start a clinic, which is something that I kind of attempted to do, and I realized that wasn't really for me, was to massage therapists are notoriously difficult to wrangle people. And so I realized I didn't want to run a clinic in that way. I didn't want to run that kind of business. I enjoyed being, a practitioner, but I didn't want to run a business of practitioners. Or want to run a group of practitioners. So, this new career, because I can move up and leverage it in different ways than I was able to as a massage therapist, my income ceiling is significantly higher than it was before. So, even though, the initial amount that I'm making is not, insane or anything like that, the potential to have a much greater return over time is huge.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. What's one piece of advice that you would give someone just starting out with YNAB?
The one piece of advice that I pretty much universally give people, and I have on my phone, this is how much of a YNAB nerd I am. I have on my phone probably 6 different sort of canned responses, templates that I do. I really do. That I just cut and paste into the Facebook groups and stuff and the boot camps. And because, we all have the same questions coming into YNAB. So when people are like, well, how do you, do that? I'm so confused. I fresh started 4 times in the last 3 days, and my piece of advice is always put down your phone, get off the computer, pull out a piece of paper, if you know what that is, and a pencil. Don't get a pen, get a pencil, and map out for yourself an entire year of your budget. So, project ahead. This is the one time that I'm forecast, right?
Yeah. Get a handle on those. Rule 2.
Yes, exactly. Project ahead, figure out what you need, and literally handwrite it all out, all 12 months, 12 different pieces of paper, and just go through that exercise and try and figure out how many true expenses you have, what will come up, what life things are happening, right? I'm getting to a point in my life where, family members are getting older, other family members are having children. I would like to buy a house sometime in the next, 5-10 years, just kind of big milestones, right? So consider those things that are happening. Try and just capture everything about life. And I tell people to do it on paper because, there's a learning curve about thinking about money, the mindset around money, and then there's a learning curve with the software itself, right? Yeah. So cut one of those out of the equation for now and just focus on the mindset, right? And that's the other thing about YNAB too, is that the software is built on the 4 rules, right? The software isn't just this thing and then we just threw some 4 rules after the fact. Like you guys are very deliberate about designing the software to fit with the rules. So if you're not thinking in the YNAB mindset, it's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Like if it's the right size, you can do it, but it just doesn't quite fit perfectly. You might be able to get it through there, but it didn't look nice, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you come in with the mindset, right, then you're fitting a square peg into a square hole, and it fits perfectly. Yeah. So that's why I like to give people that piece of advice. Figure out the mindset first, then go and do the software piece.
So Ben, who helps in our community, we call him Ben B because we have another Ben here.
Yeah.
So if we were to hire you, we would have Sita, and then if any other Sita ever came along, she would be required to use her last name initial. So Ben came after Ben, so now he's Ben B, and he said that what did he say? I had a note here. You're the keeper of the YNAB Community Dictionary.
I don't know why he said that.
I did not know that was a thing. I don't even know if I know all the words.
I don't think it is a thing. Yeah. That's just me nerding out. Like, my dictionary, my YNAB dictionary goes into my list of template responses in my phone and all that stuff.
So, but there are words we use that people wouldn't necessarily. Okay.
Yeah. Like one of the words that everybody uses is like whack-a-mole. So that's when you have to go in, like when you spend, $50 extra on dining out, you have to go get it from somewhere else. So that's a common one. YNAB broke when, all your dollars have jobs. They just don't have the jobs that you want them to have, right? Yeah. So like, I want to go to the movies, but I've got, $0 in my fund money, but I have like, $500,000 in my bank account, right?
Your YNAB broke.
Yeah, your YNAB broke, which is a good thing.
Yes,
some people come in and they think like, why would you want to talk about being broke? Like that's so negative and terrible. And I'm like, no, that's like the best form of broke.
Yeah,
that's
you've arrived.
You've arrived. Yes, that's zero-based budgeting. So there's YNAB broke. And I started thinking for myself, I don't know if I made this up or somebody else did, and I took it, I don't remember. But, I often use the phrase, I'm YNAB bored. So when I worked for myself, I was able to pay myself just once a month and then do all my budgeting.
Oh, no, you removed half the fun.
Yeah. I know. That's what I'm saying. I got YNAB bored. So, and still to this day, I do that. I have aged my money, so I'm buffered ahead. And so I do all my budgeting on one day, and I'm supremely lazy. And so I don't want to be like entering transactions all the time. I'm like a combination of, a month ahead and supremely lazy and a minimalist. And so like, I don't have a lot of transactions. The transactions that I do have, I like to pile all into like one day. And I only have to do it all in one day because I only pay myself basically once a month. So I have like one day where I have like this flurry of activity on YNAB, and then literally like 28 to 31 days, I'm like super bored. I've got nothing to do in YNAB. I literally just open the app and just like scroll through and like count the green bubbles and the yellow bubble. Yeah. And then I close the app because there's nothing else to do.
You've made it. I've often talked about how aspirational it is for finances to become boring.
It is extremely aspirational. And it's like YNAB broke. It's like, it sounds like a negative thing. Like being bored sounds like a negative thing. But I'm like, no, being bored is like the best thing you could possibly have in YNAB. Just nothing to do, right?
When you counter that with how you grew up and just kind of the environment that you as a child seen through a child's eyes, as you compare it and you're like, whoa, this is frantic and not fun, and stressful. That's pretty interesting contrast, I guess.
Yes. And I think that probably is part of the reason that I make it so simple for myself, because I don't want to lose track, because I remember my mom like rifling through the mail, like, where did I put that envelope? Have you seen the envelope that had, this written on it. And if you're like, oh no, this isn't the one, it's the one from 2 months ago. And I'm just like, I don't know what's going on here. Right. Yeah. So I try to avoid that in my own life by just super simplifying it as much as possible. You know, like I hardly ever keep money in checking. I do everything on credit cards. Like I buy everything on credit cards and then I pay the credit card off once a month. So most of the time my checking account is literally $0. Right. And so I like to do all my budgeting on one day so that I only have to transfer into checking once. I don't have to constantly be making sure, you know, where my money is basically. Another thing from childhood is, you know, being at the store and trying one credit card and be like, oh, that didn't go through. And be like, oh, let me try this other one. Okay. That one went through. You know, there's a lot of that as a kid. And just trying to think about like, where is all of our money, right? So, I keep it super simple, and so I'm very YNAB bored. Yeah, that's awesome. Another dictionary term that I really like.
I have another super important question for you. It might be our last, but is it a Doberman behind you on the picture on the wall?
That's a Doberman. That's a Doberman. So some relative in the family drew that, and I don't know who it is. I'm actually right now living with my grandmother-in-law. So one of the things that my husband and I were able to do during the pandemic was to come across the country to stay with her. She's 94. She's been totally independent, living on her own, widowed for 33 years. And just an amazing person, but you know, she's starting to struggle a bit. She had a couple of strokes. And so we were immediately able to look at the budget, jump into action and say, can we go there? We don't want her to go to a nursing home during a pandemic. Can we go and stay with her? And, you know, we totally could. We picked up and moved our everything across the country. We packed up our house. It's all in the garage now. Somehow we crammed it all into her garage. And, you know, we're able to stay here with her and help her stay out of the nursing home, which is great.
Awesome. Yeah. Now, is your husband a total YNAB nerd, or is it just you?
No, my husband is actually like, he's not anti-YNAB, but he's just, you know,
normal.
He's a normal person.
He's just normal.
He's a normal person, has no desire to really actively budget. He's definitely one of those people that's just don't spend money, and then you'll have
interesting. Just kind of naturally like just not going to spend.
Yeah. But he has a lot of money anxiety, right? So he doesn't enjoy life quite as much because he's like, I don't know, I have no idea how much money I have, but I know that I'll probably have to pay some bills soon. So I'm just not going to buy new clothes, right? And so he runs around with jeans full of holes for way too long. Usually I have to steal them and throw them away. Like I have to hide them in like somebody else's trash can because he'll go and like find the jeans.
He'll be like, oh, that's weird. I don't remember putting these in here.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, you can afford some new jeans, man. Like, but if he used YNAB, he would know when he could afford new jeans. But instead he just runs his jeans into the ground, buys them and hopes nothing bad happens in the meantime, which is, I guess it's a way of managing money, but it's just not very fun.
It's a way. There are worse ways, right, than just like never spending, right? There are definitely worse ways. But yeah, there's still anxiety. That's interesting. There's this idea that like the super saver or like the ever frugal might have money anxiety still without the clarity.
Why. Yes, that's exactly why he's so frugal. That's exactly why.
Interesting. Well, I like him still. So
yeah, he's an all right.
Yeah. That's excellent.
We make it work.
Well, Sita, do you have any other parting words of wisdom for YNABers all across the world? It's so funny. You said you were lazy. You're like, yeah, I'm lazy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like the least lazy woman I've ever talked to. But lazy, you're money lazy. Okay, I get that.
Lazy. I don't like to have to do a lot of work and be entering transactions. Yeah, I'm just money lazy.
Okay, cool. Yeah, any parting words of advice? Any last tidbits of wisdom?
Oh, no, I don't know that I have any tidbits of wisdom. It's like a big question.
I mean, you nailed it with your paper exercise. Like that's so solid that people just remove one of the confounding variables, which is the software, and they just get going on the thinking, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
I like it. Yeah, that's excellent.
And I guess, you know, one of my biggest tips would be just engage with the community, you know, like that was so big for me. And that's why I still do it now. It just helps me stay on track and helps me stay focused. And it's just fun. Like YNABers are some of the best people on the planet.
It's true.
Like the internet can be like a terrible cesspool of not fun people, right? Like there's some not great corners of the internet, but YNAB corners of the internet are like, it's like the like the sun and everybody's dancing and there's music. Like that's what the YNAB corner of the internet is like. You cannot possibly go wrong in the YNAB corner of the internet.
That is what a stress-free internet would look like. A no money stress internet would look like the YNAB corners of the internet. If people just didn't have to carry on all that unnecessary financial stress.
Yes.
Yeah. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, the YNAB community is fantastic. It's just full of like great nerds. It's wonderful.
Well, thanks for coming on. And I'm glad that we could make it work after I had to push you off. I don't even remember what it was that I had.
It was somebody's birthday party. Either your daughter had a birthday, or she had to go to a party, or something.
No,
like that.
it was either Lydia's or Faye's, because it was there are 2 February birthdays that we have, so it was one or the other, and they're 4 days apart, so I can't even remember which one was which. But
wow.
Okay, well, yeah, this has been an absolute pleasure. And I think people are going to get a lot out of this. I mean, you shared a ton, and I love that your journey's not exactly like this, like clean, like and then this, but it's like this. You know, you just kept coming back to it. I love it.
Yeah, it was not linear at all. It's very just slow and steady. Just stay committed and do what you can do. And if it's not perfect, no big deal. You just it'll get perfect.
Perfect. Yeah. Congrats on the job too. Landing the big job. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that was huge. That was a big accomplishment for me.
All right, YNABers, that is another money story. Until next time, follow YNAB's 4 rules and you will win financially. You've never budgeted like this.